Hey everyone, Hurricane Milton, huh? If you're feeling a little bombarded with all the news, you are not alone. We're here to break it all down, give you the clear picture of the storm's impact.
Yeah, it's a lot to process for sure, especially with Milton coming in so soon after Hurricane Helene. It's been
Exciting. So we're
pretty.
diving into three main sources today. We've got those city press releases out of Orlando, Governor DeSantis's press releases, and then to give us that on-the-ground perspective, a news article from globalnews.ca.
That's the thing, right? Combining those different angles gives us that fuller picture.
Okay, so let's set the scene here. Milton's path, the initial impact, it slams into Siesta Key, Florida, Wednesday night, October 9th, Category 3 storm.
A strong one. And it's easy to forget, but in those hours leading up to landfall, a huge chunk of Florida, they were bracing for impact.
Totally. And you get a sense of that when you see the hurricane warnings. They covered Brevard, Charlotte, Citrus, DeSoto.
Oh yeah, the list goes on.
It does. Flagler, Hardy, Hernando, Highlands, Hillsborough. And those are just a few.
Right, right. And on top of that, many of those counties, they weren't just under hurricane warnings, they were also under storm surge warnings and watches, meaning coastal communities. They were on high alert.
Especially Tampa. It seemed like they were right in the bullseye there for a while.
Absolutely. And while Milton did hit a large part of the coast, that track, it shifted a bit south just before landfall. Tampa, they were spared the worst-case scenario.
So a little bit of luck there for Tampa. But I have to imagine that doesn't mean other areas got off easy.
Unfortunately not. That storm surge, while not as bad as initially feared in Tampa, it still caused major damage elsewhere. Sarasota County, for instance, saw surges of 8 to 10 feet.
Wow, just goes to show even a slight shift in that track can make all the difference.
That's the thing about hurricanes. Even with all the forecasting, that element of unpredictability, it's always there.
Yeah, those surges are nothing to mess with. It really highlights just how powerful nature can be. And you mentioned Sarasota County, the globalnews.ca article. It really paints a picture of what people went through, on the ground level. One story that stuck with me is about Tom Reynolds. A 90-year-old lived in Matlacha.
Oh, Tom's story is heartbreaking. Hit by a tornado spawned by the Hurricane A&D, the storm surge, 4 feet of mud and water inside his house. That's just devastating.
It's hard to even imagine. And Matlacha, with all its colorful buildings, they took a pretty big hit, didn't they?
Yeah, Matlacha really bore the brunt of it. And sadly, that's often the case with hurricanes. Coastal communities, barrier islands, they face that direct impact, the full force of the wind and the waves.
Right on the front lines. It's interesting, though, the article also mentioned Anna Maria Island. They got hit hard by Helene a few weeks back. But this time, they might have actually fared a little better.
It's a bit counterintuitive, isn't it? The article suggests all that sand Helene dumped on Anna Maria, like piles of debris, it might have actually acted as a buffer against Milton's surge.
So remnants from one hurricane lessening the blow of the next one, that's wild. Mother Nature works in mysterious ways, that's for sure. But speaking of the human element here, the globalnews.ca article, it also shared the story of Jackie Kernick, pregnant in Sarasota. She was facing that tough decision. Evacuate with a young family or ride out the storm.
Oh, it's a dilemma so many Floridians face. And, in a state shaped like Florida with those limited evacuation routes, it's not a simple choice. It becomes a logistical nightmare for millions.
For sure. And the article talked about how hard it was to find a hotel room, even if you could evacuate. The prices were through the roof. It really adds another layer of stress to an already difficult situation.
Exactly. It really underscores just how important it is to be prepared. Know your evacuation zone, have a plan, that disaster kit ready to go. But even then, hurricanes, they force you to make tough calls.
No doubt about it. So let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the response to Hurricane Milton. Both the Orlando and the governor's press releases, they really paint a picture of this massive coordinated effort, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking a full-on mobilization, statewide. Emergency operations centers were humming, both at the city and the state level.
Yeah.
51 counties, that's the most in Florida, right? Under a state of emergency.
Wow, 51 counties. That's staggering. And it wasn't just one agency. It was all hands on deck. The Division of Emergency Management, the National Guard, the State Guard, even the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. I mean, everyone was involved.
Right. And it's not just about the numbers. It's the coordination between them, the collaboration. You've got government agencies, private businesses, nonprofits, all working together.
It's impressive. They even highlighted resources like the Disaster Legal Hotline and Samaritan's Purse. Those are things people might not think about right away, but could be so crucial in the aftermath. It really shows they were thinking about every aspect of recovery.
Exactly. It's not just about the immediate rescue and relief. It's about the long game, too, addressing those long-term needs, debris removal, mental health support. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's a good way to put it. It seems like Florida, they've learned a lot from past hurricanes. They've really stepped up their game.
No doubt. They've invested heavily in preparedness and response, and you see that paying off in their ability to mobilize resources to coordinate on such a massive scale.
And they helped so many. The press release said nearly 150 shelters were open, giving shelter to over 31,000 residents.
Shelters, they're a lifeline, a safe haven for those who can't stay home or choose not to. Of course, managing that many shelters, with all those people, it's no small feat.
It's a huge undertaking. And the press releases, they didn't just stop at shelters. They talked about getting those high water vehicles in place, the pumps, the generators, the evacuations, restoring those essential services. It's a massive operation.
It really is. Hurricane response, it's a complex beast. You have to think ahead, you have to be ready to adapt. No room for error when lives are on the line.
And I'm sure all of this comes with a hefty price tag.
You're right. Hurricane response and recovery, it's a big investment. But at the end of the day, it's an investment in people, in communities. And you can't put a price on that.
You really can't. One thing that surprised me, they really emphasized debris removal. I'll admit I hadn't really considered that aspect before.
Yeah, it often gets overlooked. But debris removal, it's essential. Think about it. Streets piled high with trees, power lines, debris from buildings. It paralyzes a community.
It's easy to forget about the cleanup, right? You're so focused on the immediate danger.
Exactly. But it's a huge part of getting back on your feet. And it's not just a quick sweep either. The press releases said over 237,000 cubic yards of debris, just from Helene, had been cleared. And now, well, they've got Milton to deal with too.
Wow. So after really digging into Hurricane Milton, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners, even those who, might not live in a hurricane zone?
I think what this really drives home is that disasters, they can happen anywhere at any time. We're looking at hurricanes now, but it's about being prepared no matter what.
Having that always be ready mindset.
Exactly. Might seem basic, but having a plan, understanding the risks where you live, that disaster kit ready to go, it makes all the difference. And listen, I can't stress this enough. Stay informed. Even after the initial event has passed, things change fast.
Things change fast, you're right. What's the best way for people to stay in the loop without getting caught up in all the, the misinformation that's out there?
Stick to official sources. Your local county's emergency management website, it's a goldmine. And of course, reliable news outlets, your local authorities. There's going to be a lot of noise out there, especially during a crisis.
Solid advice for sure. This deep dive into Hurricane Milton, it's been eye-opening. Do you think going through this, with Milton so soon after Helene, will it change how Floridians approach hurricane season in the future?
It's got to leave a mark. 2 major hurricanes back to back. It's a powerful reminder of what nature can throw at us. We might see changes to building codes, to how evacuations are handled, maybe even just a shift in how individuals see their own risk.
Maybe even some innovation, right? In how we predict these storms or how we respond when disaster strikes.
They say necessity is the mother of invention. These events, as tough as they are, they often lead to positive change. Milton brought destruction, no doubt, but it might just pave the way for a more resilient future.
That's a hopeful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Hurricane Milton. Remember, everyone, knowledge is power. Stay safe out there.